Hey, it's Alex Williams of the New Stack today with Jenny Loza, Eucalyptus product manager from HPE, who is here to show us the API fidelity between Eucalyptus and Amazon Web Services. Hey, Jenny.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. So you're gonna show this, you're gonna give us a little demo.
That's correct. I'll be showing the Eucalyptus Management Console and demonstrating Eucalyptus's API fidelity with AWS.
Excellent. Well, let's get right into it.
Okay, great. Just to give you a little bit of a short intro, Eucalyptus is a Hewlett-Packard Enterprise product that implements the AWS APIs for use in on-premise clouds. So you can have an AWS compatible private cloud either in your own data center or hosted in a data center somewhere else. And Eucalyptus, our API compatibility with AWS is really our bread and butter, and it's what differentiates us from any other private cloud product out on the market. So we've implemented a lot of the AWS services and APIs, things like EC2, S3, STS, SWF, Elastic Block Storage, and a host of other services. And I'm going to be demonstrating those things for you today. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. All right. So what you're seeing here is the Eucalyptus login page. I'm just going to refresh. And what you'll notice is that not only can you log into Eucalyptus using our management console, you can also log into AWS. And this is a great way to really use a single tool to manage your private clouds with Eucalyptus or your public clouds with AWS. And it's a great way for us to really demonstrate our API compatibility. So you could use your access key and secret key for your AWS account to log into our management console, or you can log directly into your Eucalyptus cloud, which is privately deployed on-prem for you. So I'm going to go ahead.
So right off, that's a big usability change, isn't it?
It's really nice. You can have one tool to manage all of your resources, which really helps with just having consistency and being used to doing things one way and not having to remember different things. But we've also tried with our console, for people who are used to AWS and their console, we've tried to maintain a lot of consistency with terminology and things like that, so that if you've come from AWS, you should be able to join Eucalyptus and not have any kind of really jarring feeling like I don't understand what these words are and I don't know what services they're associated with. So now we're in Eucalyptus. I'm looking at my cloud. I've tried to keep my cloud pretty clean, so there's not a lot going on, but you should see a whole lot of things on this dashboard that look familiar. We've got all of our services are up. You'll see object storage, which is S3, auto scaling, load balancing, CloudWatch, CloudFormation, IAM, all our services are up. We've got volumes, snapshots, key pairs, CloudFormation stacks, everything that you would typically see in your basic AWS implementation. So, the first thing I want to do just to get us started is launch an instance. It's the most basic thing that you can do in AWS. But to really demonstrate our AWS compatibility, I was thinking I would up the ante a little bit. And let's use the CloudFormation service to do this, and we're going to do it with an AWS template. So you can take CloudFormation templates that you're using to deploy your application stack in AWS, and you can bring that CloudFormation template right over into Eucalyptus and use it to deploy your application in Eucalyptus with no or very few changes. So to demonstrate this, let's just go off and we'll Google Amazon CloudFormation templates. Okay, let's find those. So here's AWS CloudFormation templates. Let's look at sample templates. You can see that this is clearly an AWS website. There's a whole bunch of CloudFormation sample templates. for a lot of services. And we'll just pick something really simple. Let's do an EC2 instance with an elastic IP address. So this will bring up an instance. It should bring it up at Amazon EC2, and it will associate one of your elastic IPs in the cloud. So looking at the template, we'll go ahead and we'll just copy the URL. Then back in Eucalyptus, we'll create a cloud formation stack, and we'll call it new stack. Let's use a template from a URL, and I'll just paste in the one from AWS. So you can see that Eucalyptus will detect that this is not a Eucalyptus native template, that it's one that came from AWS. And what we'll do is parse that template, find out anything that needs to be updated, like the machine images, because obviously AMIs that are stored in Amazon are going to be different than the images that you have on your private cloud, or your instance type. So an M1 small in Amazon, you'll have those in your local cloud. We may not support all of them in each release. So we'll go ahead and bring up what's in your local cloud rather than what's in AWS. And we'll tell you exactly what we're converting. So here, as I mentioned, we're going to be taking your image IDs that were in AWS and bring you the ones that are in your local cloud. So let's go ahead and use this. Now the software will convert this template. We're ready to go. You can see from the description, this is really an AWS sample template. It's even got stuff in it about how you're going to be billed for AWS resources used if you create a stack from this template. Now, obviously, in Eucalyptus, you're no longer going to be billed because that's your own private on-prem cloud. So now we've got our parameters already set up. SSH, we're looking for a key. I've already created a key just to make things easy today. Here are the VM types that I was talking about earlier. These are the ones that are on this cloud. We'll go ahead and pick an M1 small just to make things pop up faster. And then our image IDs. AWS has lots and lots of images. This cloud only has 4. We'll pick CentOS 6. And let's go ahead and create the stack. So you can see that we're working. We've successfully sent the request. Resources down here are being created. You can see the create is in progress, and everything will update as it's created. So we've got an IP address allocated from the cloud. We've started up an instance with this ID. You know, it takes a little while for an instance to get up to running, which is really one of the things that takes so long. We've created a security group to associate with this instance. So everything is coming up. So while we're waiting for this to come up, did you have any questions that you want to ask about stuff?
Yeah, I guess really you have made some efforts to really delineate between Eucalyptus and AWS while also maintaining that compatibility between the two platforms.
That's correct, right. So everything that you'll see here should look really familiar if you're associated with AWS, but we've tried to really make a lot of usability improvements. We try to create a really workflow-focused UI so that we'll guide you through the things that you need to do. And, you know, we've got a lot of stuff in here. Here's your template. And you can see now that everything's complete. Our stack has created.
Great.
So you might wonder what happens if we've got unsupported services, right? I mean, they are churning out services and new features at an amazing rate. And Eucalyptus has a small development team. It's impossible for us to keep up. So we've decided to take a really customer-focused way of looking at things. We talk to our customers, we talk to potential customers, we look at what's happening in the industry, and then we really carefully prioritize new services that we're going to implement and the order that we're going to implement them in. And, you know, we have all of the services that support the most common use cases in AWS, and we're going to see those in a minute. But for the things that we don't support, we try to help you out. We don't want to trip you up when you're using Eucalyptus and you've been used to using AWS. So for example, if you were to try to import a CloudFormation template, that has an unsupported service or that has unsupported parameters within a supported service, we'll flag that for you and let you know exactly what needs to be adjusted in your template so that you can use this in Eucalyptus. So, for example, going through these AWS sample templates again, Elasticache. It's something that we're thinking about implementing in the future, but it's not something that we have in our current release of Eucalyptus. So let's go ahead and see what happens if we try to use this Elasticache template to create a stack. I'm just going to go ahead and tear this one down. So you can see the delete is in progress for our other stack. I'll go ahead and create a new one. So we'll call this one Elasticache. And we'll pick that Elasticache template. You can see we're reading the template, and hey, we're not going to let you do this. We've got unsupported items in here. It contains services that Eucalyptus doesn't support, and you need to edit the template. We'll tell you exactly what your service is that's unsupported so that you can go in, fix your template, do what you need to do, use another caching service. We have a lot of workarounds for things that we haven't supported.
So you're kind of you guys are in this constant process of deciding what you're going to support.
That's correct, right. So we're about to start planning right now for our next release. And we're always looking at, what's new, what our customer use cases are, and what we need to do to really support them and help them be successful.
Mm-hmm.
So let's look at some more use cases. So a really common use case for a cloud application developer is to have load-based auto-scaling, right? So a developer will architect their cloud-native application so that the traffic that's coming in will flow evenly to all the instances through a load balancer. And the number of instances that are supporting the application will automatically grow and shrink depending on the level of traffic and the level of workload. So we're going to demonstrate how to do this with AWS services in Eucalyptus. And this is going to use elastic load balancing, and it's going to use auto-scaling. Okay. So first, let's go ahead and we'll create a load balancer. So I've got one here. I'll go ahead and create another one. This one's mine. Let's create another one. We'll call it yours. And you can see that Eucalyptus has provided the most common listener for your load balancer. So they receive traffic on the client side, they route traffic through the instance side, and this just automatically opens up the most commonly used port for HTTP traffic. So you don't have to go through the hassle of creating a listener. You can always add another listener. You can add secure listeners like HTTPS. You can add SSL certificates, anything that you would need to make your load balancer the way that you would like it to be. Okay. So let's go ahead and look at what we've got here. So we'll automatically add your availability zone if you only have one, like this cloud has. Or if you've got multiple clusters, you can just add as many as you want. And then you can add any instances that you want to include. And we're going to go ahead and leave the VMs that are sitting here out because we're going to put a scaling group behind this and let the scaling group handle creating instances. So now we've got just some instance health checks. We've provided some defaults for you. We'll go ahead and create. So this is really simple to create a load balancer. Okay, now yours.
Otherwise, the client would be going between their environment and AWS constantly, wouldn't they?
That's correct, right. So you can do everything in Eucalyptus. Now we'll go ahead and create an auto-scaling group. Mm. So you can see we don't have any yet. Let's create one. And this is the auto-scaling group that's going to sit behind our load balancer. So we'll call this one yours too. or we'll call it your scaling group. Oops. I'm pretty good at giving demos, but I'm not so good at typing.
Yeah.
Typing's hard. Okay. So we'll put a name on here. We'll select a launch configuration. I went ahead and created a demo launch configuration earlier. This just specifies what your instances are going to look like when you launch them into your scaling group. So this gives you a VM type and what your image is going to be, if these are going to be CentOS or RHEL or Ubuntu or anything like that. Then you define your capacity. So you can say, I never want the scaling group to have less than one instance. Let's say most of the time I want it to have 2, and for a maximum, I want it to have 4. So it'll try to maintain 2 instances. It'll never go above 4. It'll never go below 1. Okay. We've already got our availability zone selected, and now we just need to put the load balancer in front of it. We're not going to use mine, we're going to use yours.
All right.
So yours is there, and we'll go ahead and create the scaling group. So as I've mentioned before, one of the things that we really do in Eucalyptus is we try to help you get everything in place so that your application will work. So when you create a scaling group, we tell you, hey, this thing isn't going to automatically add instances or take away instances based on traffic unless you put a scaling policy on it. Mm-hmm. So let's go ahead and do that. We try to be really workflow oriented. So you can see now we're creating a scaling policy for your scaling group. We'll call it your scaling policy. Why not? And we're going to scale up by 1 instance anytime we reach a certain threshold. So you can select from your existing CloudWatch alarms if you've got some configured, or another thing that we do in Eucalyptus is if you haven't created any alarms, we don't want you to have to leave this dialog and go off and do something else. Then, maybe you get a cup of coffee, somebody calls you on the phone, you've forgotten to create your alarm, and now you don't have anything here to make sure that your scaling policy is scaling up and down. So we try to do everything in a really workflowy way and make it really easy for you to get there. So we'll create an alarm now called CPU utilization above 50. And this is going to be if our CPU utilization goes above 50%. Okay, so we'll say when the average CPU utilization for my scaling group, which will be all the instances in my scaling group, is greater than or equal to 50%. And that's going to be our alarm. So when our average CPU utilization for everything within my scaling group goes above 50%, we're good to go. And now this alarm is automatically selected, and we can say when this alarm happens, we're going to scale up by 1 instance. So we can tell as our traffic comes in, if one of our VMs is having to work really hard to keep up with that traffic, we'll just go ahead and add another instance. So you can set policies to scale up, you can set policies to scale down. You can see our scaling policy right here. Scale up by 1 instance when our CPU utilization is above 50. And you can add scaling policies. You can easily remove policies. So let's go ahead and look at our instances in this scaling group. So remember when we created this scaling group, we said our desired capacity would be to always have 2 instances. So you can see this automatically, we didn't do anything. It launched these 2 instances for us. They're ready to go. So if our CPU utilization goes above 50%, boom, it'll bring up a 3rd one. If it stays above 50%, it'll bring up a 4th one, and it'll keep going until it reaches that maximum. If we had set a scaling policy to terminate an instance when our CPU utilization goes below 20%, when that happens, it'll terminate an instance. If it continues, it'll terminate another one until we get back down to this desired capacity. So you can also just terminate an instance. If something seems wrong with it, or for whatever reason you don't like that one, you can go ahead and terminate it. Yeah, so we'll say, yes, we do want to terminate this instance. Do we want to take our desired capacity down by one instance as well, so it doesn't launch another one? Let's not do that. We'll go ahead and say we still want to have 2 VMs in our scaling group. So we'll terminate this instance. It's been terminated. You can see now there's only one. And then we'll go ahead and refresh. And oh, hey, it started up another one for us. And that's because we've said we always want to have 2. So auto scaling will really keep your application running exactly as you want it to. And with the load balancer, all of your traffic will be evenly distributed between your instances. So that's a really common use case. We see that a lot in AWS, and it works just great in Eucalyptus.
Okay, so that's a common use case.
Another common use case is, if you have a lot of people using your cloud, you might want to put these people in groups and give different groups of people different access. If you've got, some developers, you're going to want to let them do a lot of different things in the cloud. Start up instances, terminate instances, anything they need for their workflow.
Right.
But if you've got people who are only supposed to be monitoring the cloud, maybe you don't want them to start new resources, or you don't want them to delete any objects that are sitting in people's object storage so that you don't mess up what your developers are doing.
Right.
So it's really common to create groups and then put policies on those groups that say people in this group can only do these certain things and they can't do these other certain things. So I'm going to go ahead and
this becomes the this is the complexity that comes when you start having a number of people using the services, right?
Right, that's correct. So if you've got a bunch of users, you need to be able to manage them easily.
Yeah.
And you don't want to have to put a policy on each individual user. So, you just put people in groups and you put a policy on the group, and then you can just add people in and out of the groups, and you don't have to create policies again later.
Great.
So first, let's go ahead and create a group. You can see we're in my account. We're going to call this group New Stack. And so these New Stack guys, I don't really trust them. I don't know what they're up to, how much they really.
All these funky things and.
Yeah, those guys might go in there and start deleting my stuff, and I would hate that. So I'm going to put some restrictions on these New Stack clowns and see if we can keep them from messing things up. So we're going to let them do what they need to do, but they're not going to mess me up. So we've got a really nice policy editor in Eucalyptus. You can create access policies in AWS, but it's a little bit more difficult to do. So we've got some templates that will automatically create some pretty easy policies for you. So you can allow someone to have full access. You can allow someone to have access to resources, but not be able to create groups, adjust policies. And then you can provide read-only access if you want, or you can create your own custom policy. And this is really simple. So what we're going to say is, these guys, okay, they can do what they want in EC2, but I don't want them to mess me up. So I'm not going to let them terminate my instances. So there's a lot of things here. And let's say, nope, we're going to deny terminate, right? So let's scroll down and look at that again. Terminate instance is deny. Everything else in EC2 is allowed. And you can see that the template itself shows that. EC2, it's got a wildcard, all resources. We're going to allow all actions, all resources. But then EC2 terminate instance for any resource, we're not going to let you do that.
Okay, there. So you can explicitly state it.
Mm-hmm. And then we'll say, okay, we'll let you do S3, but we're not going to let you delete anything. So again, you can create things, you can modify things, but you can't delete anything. We're not going to let you do IAM. And we'll go ahead and create this policy. So now we've got a custom access policy for anyone that goes in this new stack group, that they're going to be, okay, I know they're new stack people, so I'll let them do some new things, but I'm not going to let them terminate any resources so that they don't go and mess up anyone else's application. So we've got a few users in this group, in this account already. So we can take a user that's in this account and we'll go ahead and add them to this group. So now we've got this user. So when you log in as this user, you're not going to be able to terminate anything, but you will be able to create things and use the cloud.
Okay.
So these are, you know, some really common AWS use cases and really basic ways to take your AWS application and deploy it on Eucalyptus so that you can have it in your own private cloud. There are a lot of reasons why people would want to do this. Data sovereignty issues, compliance issues. You know, if you just don't want to have your data up in the cloud. We've had customers who have acquired companies that have applications running in AWS, and they've said, we don't want to have this running in AWS because we view them as a competitor. They sell on the Amazon side the same products that we sell. So we don't want to interrupt our application developers, but we would like them to take their applications and not use them on AWS. And this way, your application developers aren't interrupted. They can still continue to develop what they're developing exactly the way they've been developing it, but they can use it in-house. People can use this for, you know, for development and test and then deploy into AWS in production. There's a lot of use cases, and you know, and the API fidelity makes it really easy.
And it opens a lot of dimensions for what the customer can do.
I think so. I think so, and it lets you use AWS and Eucalyptus together.
What are some of the emerging use cases that you guys are starting to see?
You know, we're starting to see some new use cases where we've got customers who are associated with the federal government, and so they can't put their data in the public cloud.
Right.
That's pretty common. We've got we're starting to see customers that are in the medical industry. And because of HIPAA laws and compliance and things like that, not only can they not put their data in the public cloud, but sometimes with healthcare data for individuals, that data has to physically reside in the country where it was created. And sometimes those countries don't have AWS regions. Right. And so maybe some of an application will be in AWS where there are regions in that country, and then in countries where they're not, a customer can install a Eucalyptus cloud in a local data center and put the data there.
Interesting.
So we see that a lot.
Interesting. Anything else that you'd like to show us before we go?
You know, I think that really covers a lot of the more interesting use cases. We didn't really show EBS volumes, but those are there. So attaching a volume to your instance, creating a snapshot from that volume, you can do all of those things. You can manage, all of your basic EC2 resources. We showed security groups, access keys, elastic IPs. So I feel like we've really covered a lot of what Eucalyptus does. We've showed some of our S3, not a lot, but we do have S3 capability. You can have buckets and objects and folders and everything that you need for object storage. So I feel like we've covered everything.
Well, Jenny, thank you so much for taking some time to show the API fidelity between Eucalyptus and Amazon Web Services.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yes, I look forward to talking again soon.
Absolutely, me too.